Hello and welcome to the Rotowire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. My name is Chris Crawford, joined today by my buddy Drew Silva. By the way, Drew is filling in for Ryan. We forgot to wish Ryan a happy birthday yesterday, Drew. So a real quick, belated happy birthday to our buddy Ryan Boyer, one of the nicest human beings possible and does a really good job with all the stuff he does as well. So happy birthday, Ryan Boyer, our colleague for a very, very long time. We're going to be talking about the three ups, the three downs, and also offering some fab suggestions for those of you who are looking to compete in your league. And hopefully you are. Hopefully you're not out of it. I know many of us might be, but hopefully if you're listening to the show, you're still in it. But first, let's get into some headlines. And I think we got to start with the Donnybrook, Drew. The Guardians White Sox. So for those who missed it, a hustle double by Jose Ramirez, a tag that looked pretty innocuous to me, from Tim Anderson to Jose Ramirez. Turns out one of them did not feel that tag was so innocuous, and it led to a all-out brawl. One of the better fights that I have seen. Now, look, I'll just be honest with you. Most of the time, this stuff does not interest me. It's pretty stupid. It's grown men fighting over stupid stuff. This one was interesting, and this one was pretty fun to watch because both guys connected pretty good. J-Ram landed a real good one. Did you enjoy what you saw from that one? And I did put, for those listening, I did put quotation marks up there.
Yeah, enjoy is probably not the right word, but that was definitely a wild one. You don't often
Yes.
see two players square up against each other. I like that the umpire just got out of the way, like they dropped the gloves like it was a hockey fight, or even reminded me of like MMA. And then
Yeah.
it just went on and on with these other scraps firing up in different areas after the benches cleared. Coaches and managers trading words and shoves. The whole delay was probably about 20 minutes. Like that's how long this thing went on for. And I was trying to read about whether there had been previous bad blood between Jose Ramirez and Tim Anderson, where this all traces back to. Obviously, those players have played for their specific teams in the same division for a long time. So, because I guess that was sort of a hard tag on Ramirez at second base, and then Anderson stood over him for a bit, but not necessarily like an abnormal baseball play at all to set that off. Ramirez said after the game that Anderson has been disrespecting the sport for a while, and that Anderson said some words to him as he was standing over him. I don't know. I couldn't really dig up anything other than that. Like,
No.
Ramirez and Tim Anderson are certain to get suspended. Like you mentioned, they both made contact, and
Right.
Ramirez kind of swiped him across the face, and Anderson looked like he was dazed a bit. It was,
Yes.
I think, because this happened at second base, there wasn't enough time for people to run out and get in the middle of them, and so they actually both got off some decent shots, if that's what you're
Yes.
looking for.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Clase was ejected as well. Maybe he gets a short suspension for being at the center of the scuffle. Just something to look out for as you're setting your lineups for the upcoming week, or maybe even the week after. That there will be suspensions handed down
Sure.
probably Monday, Tuesday, and then appeals process. You all know the drill. But yeah, that was it was one of the better, in quotations, baseball fights that we've seen in a long time.
It's worth pointing out real quick that Tim Anderson was not in the lineup today. Jose Ramirez is currently playing. He's over 2 with a walk, but did steal a couple of bags, which is nice for fantasy managers. I will say nobody got out there. Whoever the second base umpire was did make a business decision in the middle of that fight because he was in the middle of that thing, and then he was like, I am not in the middle of this thing. I do not blame him one bit for getting out of the way. I did see some stuff that Ramirez did say in an interview that he feels like Tim Anderson has been disrespecting the game for a long time and stuff like that, which I think is nonsense. Does Tim Anderson do everything by the book? No. But I think I don't think he's actually disrespecting the game. I do wonder if there were some words said during that take, maybe that upset Jose Ramirez. We could never really hear that stuff. Yeah, this will be interesting. And for sure, you're looking at suspensions for both players. It's just a matter of how long. Cleveland, it hurts them bad because they're still in this thing. Whether they want to be or not is another question mark, but they're absolutely still in this playoff push. But man, that was something, because I've never seen one escalate that quickly so far. That was brick throwing the trident. That was the most escalation I have seen in a very long time.
I don't think the ump made a business decision. I think he was like, "Let's get it on." Like that's what
Fair enough.
But yeah, we'll get into some other topics. We talked about Max Fried's excellent return from the injured list on yesterday's show. Nestor Cortes was excellent too in his return to the Yankees rotation Saturday against the Astros. Only went 4 innings, but that was planned. He struck out 8 of the 14 batters he faced and surrendered only 1 hit, which was a 3rd inning solo homer to Jose Altuve. Cortes was still supposed to be out on a minor league rehab assignment, but the Yankees brought him back this weekend as Domingo Germán went into treatment for alcohol abuse. Germán's done for the year, they're saying, and Luis Severino has been a mess. So the Yankees need Cortes to be as good as he was Saturday, and hopefully for being able to work deep in games if they have any hope of an AL wildcard run. He missed all of June and July because of a left shoulder strain, but sure looked healthy in his return, and you would think would be able to work a bit deeper on his next turn through the rotation. I think that's Friday at Miami. And yeah, looked really sharp, at least with the swing and miss stuff, and hopefully can get up his pitch count up near 90 when he takes on the Marlins going into next weekend.
Yeah, looked good. And it's a nice reminder of like what the talent is. Like, it's been a disappointing year for him. We of course remember that Cortes got off to that slower start after, I believe it was an ankle sprain. He was supposed to pitch for Team USA, and then it didn't look like he was ever fully healthy or like ready to roll, I should say, at the early part of the season. But it's a nice reminder that this guy is talented. Chad asked a good question, by the way. Just going quickly back to the Jose Ramirez thing, would a lengthy suspension mean Manzardo rapid ascension? That's an interesting one. I think if healthy, yes, but I don't think Kyle Manzardo is going to be healthy for a little while. I think that's one of the reasons why Tampa Bay was willing to make this trade. We'll talk about the player they got in a second. Unfortunately, was not such a promising debut. There's a little bit of a spoiler alert for you, but I do think if Kyle Manzardo gets the call, absolutely somebody that you should be taking a look at. But yeah, Nestor Cortes was fantastic. Speaking of fantastic, we got some good news regarding Eury Perez, and it looks like he's going to be making his return to the mound on Monday against Cincinnati. Now, just in case you somehow forgot, this is a pitcher who has a 2.36 ERA, a 1.09 whip, a 61 to 17 strikeout to walk ratio. And all those numbers are great, but they're almost misleading, because Eury Perez had one absolute shellacking against Atlanta where he gave up 7 runs and didn't get out of the first inning. He take away that, he has an ERA of like 1.6 on the season. He has been as dominant as any young starting pitcher that I have seen. It's been really impressive, and I've seen some awfully good ones, Drew. We are very old. I'm a little older than you, but the mustache makes me look younger, though, right?
Sure.
Thank you.
Did you do that overnight? Because we did a show yesterday, and I don't remember.
I did it like an hour and a half after we stopped recording. I could not stand looking at the white in this thing anymore. I mean, I know there's some white in here, but it's much better. I'm feeling much younger. I'm going to go buy a Porsche when we're done. So back to Eury Perez. Speaking of young, the issue is going to be, how are they going to use him? It sounds like it's going to be starting for now, but there's a very good chance that there's going to be skip starts. There's a very good chance that he's going to be on strict innings and pitch counts limits. Even still, I think you have to have Eury Perez in your lineup as long as possible, because when that guy is at his best, and he's been at his best for an awful long time, at least for this year, he's been as good as anybody. And while Miami doesn't provide the greatest offense, they're absolutely playing for stuff. Eury Perez can be a very, very nice factor for you down the stretch. And if people got impatient and dropped him, I think you have to add him to your roster.
Yeah, I mean, I've been waiting for this return for a long time in a deeper league. It stinks when this happens with a fantasy pitcher, and you just have to wait it out, because it's not like he's on the IL. You can either drop him and hope you can pick him back up when they bring him back. I would be a little bit worried about how long he's going to pitch, how deep he's going to pitch into games. I think they're going to treat him mostly as a traditional starter, but you're going to see some shorter outings because the Marlins are, they're in the wild card hunt. and they could be relying on Eury Perez to pitch in a playoff series. But
Mhm.
they also, they need to win games to get into that wild card picture when it comes time to map out exactly if they're going to make the postseason on who they'd be playing. So
Sure.
it's going to be a bit of a juggling act. But if he's starting, I don't care how long he's projected to go. I would get him on my active roster in fantasy for sure.
Good call.
Um, some other news before we get into the 3 up, 3 down from Saturday. Red Sox manager Alex Cora confirmed on Sunday morning that Trevor Story is going to remain on his minor league rehab assignment for the full 20-day window, which runs through this upcoming Wednesday. So
Mhm.
his activation from the 60-day injured list is now set for Thursday. Story hasn't suffered any sort of setback in his recovery from it was one of those internal brace surgeries to repair the UCL in his right elbow, not Tommy John, but Tommy John adjacent. But he's been excellent so far in the minors. 967 OPS with 3 homers and 3 doubles in 12 games between AA Portland and AAA Worcester, while also playing 44 innings at shortstop. Kind of like a forgotten man at this point, but a former early round pick in fantasy drafts who can certainly help down the stretch. You'll just have to wait a little bit longer, 4 days longer than maybe we thought it would be. Probably takes over right away for Yu Chang at shortstop. With Luis Urias, I think, continuing to get most of the action at second base. We talked about Urias on Saturday's show, how he could wind up being a nice under the radar trade deadline pickup for Boston. And Urias now has 3 hits in 2 games with the Red Sox. Good to see that. He hit an RBI
Yeah.
single through the left side of the infield Saturday in the 9th inning as the Red Sox tried and failed to stage a comeback against the Blue Jays. But yeah, should soon be a Story and Urias middle infield alignment there in Beantown for Red Sox team that is not fully out of it just yet and is going to get healthy on the pitching side soon too, with Chris Sale, Tanner Huck, Garrett Whitlock all nearing their returns.
It is worth pointing out that the Red Sox are currently down 6-0 to the Blue Jays, but absolutely still in it. There's so much time left in this season. Our buddy Chad brings up, by the way, that Brandon Woodruff has looked fantastic in his return. If you're listening to this will be a little dated, but struck out 5 over the first 2 innings, did allow a home run to Endy Rodriguez, who looks like a solid young player as well. But yeah, it's great to see Brandon Woodruff back and dominating. This is going to be such a fun little end of the season, by the way, Drew. There are so many mediocre teams competing for this thing that it makes it kind of fun. It's the best and the worst of what we have, right? Because this extra wild card does make more teams in it, which is good, but it also makes more teams in it, which is terrible because there are going to be some very flawed baseball teams that end up making the postseason.
Yeah, like the NL wild card is
It's a mess.
I mean, the Giants, surprisingly, are in the top wild card spot right now. The Phillies, you expected them to be there.
Sure.
The Reds, Marlins are a half game back. The Cubs are now only 1 game back of the 3rd AL wild card. Diamondbacks have dropped off to 1.5 back. The Padres sitting there 3.5 back. I mean, there are some teams that are limping to the finish line. But it keeps these fan bases interested because there's a lot of teams that can consider themselves as contenders as where we sit right now.
Absolutely. That covers most of the big weekend stories. We're going to do our 3 up, 3 down for Saturday and offer some waiver tigers. Waiver tigers? I don't think that's a thing. Waiver targets. But first,
I like
a quick commercial. I do too. Waiver tigers. That's coming to the CW in fall of 2024. But first, a quick commercial break. We know the weather can impact how far a ball can fly, but we never know what all that heat and humidity or cold air is really doing to the ball. The Home Run Forecast Index gives us an easy way to determine how good or bad the air is for ball flight. The index is calculated by measuring stadium-specific weather conditions and is displayed on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being the most unfavorable for good ball flight and 10 indicating the most favorable air. There is a strong correlation between the index and the number of runs scored per game and the number of home runs hit. Games that have that highest index of 10 for the whole game average over 10 runs and 2.8 homers over the course of the year. An index is created for each game, so you can see what it will be in any stadium and how the weather's influence might change over the course of the game, as well as the wind direction. Right now, you can get access to the HRF Premium site for only $5 a month and see what the index will look like for every hour of every game. Go to homerunforecast.com now to sign up. All right, let's get into our 3 up and 3 down. And Drew, why don't you start with a guy that on August 6th for the New York Yankees, I can't believe we're talking about this guy, but talk about the wonder pickup that was Jake Bauers.
Yeah, man. Jake Bauers went 2 for 4 with the solo homer in the Yankees 3-1 defeat of the Astros on Saturday, which also matched his line from Friday's game, 2 for 4 with a solo shot and what was a 7-3 loss for the Yankees. He's suddenly pretty close to the everyday first baseman for New York after what went down with Anthony Rizzo. For those unfamiliar, Rizzo was placed on the 10-day injured list this past Thursday with post-concussion syndrome from a concussion that stems back to a collision that he had with Fernando Tatis Jr. all the way back in late May.
Very
It
odd.
looked ugly at the time. Like Rizzo
Mm-hmm.
was catching a ball at first base, and Tatis was retreating back and ran into Rizzo's head and neck at an awkward angle. Rizzo passed through concussion protocol in the immediate aftermath of that incident. But he acknowledged this week that he's been feeling bouts of fogginess ever since, trouble seeing the ball, forgetting how many outs there were, just scary stuff. And you could see it in how much he cratered offensively since that play. Like had a terrible June, had a terrible July, was not in the Yankees lineup for the most part since the beginning of August. There's no timetable for his return. It sounds like they're going to treat this very carefully. And it presents a big opportunity for Bauers, who's been
Mm-hmm.
hitting leadoff against right-handers. There was an IL stint for a shoulder injury in July, but Bauers around that has a 942 OPS over his last 60 major league plate appearances dating back to late June, 5 homers in that 15 game span, and overall 821 OPS on the year. Bauers is definitely a flawed player. He spent the entire 2022 season in the minors and did not perform especially well in the minors. But he has good pop from the left side, and it comes down to the Yankees need him right now. He can slot in at DH in the corner outfield too, where there are openings for playing time. If Rizzo does return, and I think it'll be a while before he does return. Aaron Judge is still dealing with lingering toe discomfort. Does he get shut down early if the Yankees fall out of the AL wildcard hunt, or just because he can't play through the pain? Judge has mostly been DHing since he returned. Bauer should keep getting regular at bats, and I don't know, might just be able to continue providing useful fantasy numbers. At least some homers and some runs scored, hitting out of that leadoff spot. I think he's been a nice pickup for the Yankees to help get them through this situation. And then I think he's a nice pickup in fantasy right now, given the playing time and what he's doing at the dish. He's flashed like being a good power hitter in the past at the major league level.
Mm-hmm.
Just has never been able to really do it consistently, but he's hot right now. I say pick him up.
What was the Jake Bauers trade early in the career that worked out very well for Tampa? Oh, it was Yandy Diaz, wasn't it? That I knew it was somebody
Yeah,
good, but
that's
I was
it.
just trying to remember because Bauers has bounced around, and he has shown those flashes. I
Mhm.
understand skepticism, like he has not been able to put it together for a full season yet, or anything close. So I do understand that, but you talk about the opportunity that is absolutely there for him, and this late in the season, the worst thing is that you drop Drake Bauers for another option. We do not have many nice things to say about Oakland on this show, but I want to talk about Paul Blackburn, who pitched another dandy of a game on Saturday against the Giants. 6 innings of 2-hit baseball, gave up no runs, struck out 7, did walk 3, but was able to work around those. Over his last 3 starts against the Astros, the Rockies, and now the Giants, he's allowed a total of 3 runs, 5 1/3 innings of 1-run baseball against Houston, 6 innings of 2-run baseball in Colorado against the Rockies, and now these 6 shutout innings against the Giants, whose lineup is flawed, but it's still a very impressive performance. And if you take a look at Blackburn's metrics, it suggests that he's been better than his 4.35 overall ERA suggests. Hard hit percentage, he is avoiding it in the 95th percentile. He's avoiding barrels in the 83rd percentile. His chase rate's in the 84th percentile. Expected slugging against him is in the 64th percentile. He doesn't throw hard, but he does throw 5 pitches. He's got 3 pitches that he throws in the 20%. They don't use his curveball and change as well. It is a tough pitch to mix up. We have seen Blackburn look good in the past as well. He looked really good in his rookie season, which was like 2000. it might have been 1984 at this point. I'm just very old, but he looked like something that was interesting for the Athletics as a young guy. He's still just 29. I'm not suggesting that he's a must-start guy, but he is worth taking a look at as a streamer, I think, because he's had success. He's avoiding that hard contact. No, he's not going to give you a ton of wins because that run support is just not going to be there. But I've been really impressed with what I've seen from Paul Blackburn since near the end of July.
Yeah, you can talk about how these players. I'd put Bauers and Blackburn in this category. Will get exposed over a larger sample size, but what remains of the regular season is a small sample size. You don't need much. You don't. It's
Yeah, that's a
okay
great point.
if it's okay if this is not the perfect hitter and not the perfect pitcher.
Sure.
Be aggressive down the stretch. That would always be my
Mhm.
advice to any fantasy baseball manager. My last three up from Saturday is Tyler O'Neill, who connected for yet another home run in the Cardinals win over the Rockies on Saturday. That's now 3 home runs in his last 4 games. He's batting .306 with a .975 OPS in 57 plate appearances since returning on July 20th from what was a multi-month absence for a lingering back injury. I'm sure the Cardinals would have liked for this home run barrage to come a bit earlier so that he could be shopped, with maybe some heavy interest ahead of the trade deadline. But this might be shaping up well. If they do want to shop him this winter, if he stays healthy, for the final 2 months, we're probably now to like 8 weeks of the regular season. I'm guessing they will shop him this winter, given the
Mhm.
logjam that they still have in the outfield. It's why he's starting in left field most nights, and why Dylan Carlson is largely taken a back seat. It seems like they want to move O'Neill and keep Carlson, but there's a decent chance another outfielder gets dealt this winter too, along with O'Neill. Alec Burleson has been good lately. I wonder if it's going to be him with all the cost control that he provides, or maybe both Carlson and O'Neill will be on the block. Um, the Yankees reportedly had deadline interest in Carlson, but couldn't figure out a package that would work for both sides. Either way, O'Neill should continue to play a lot down the stretch, and he's usually productive when he's healthy, with the power and some speed. If he's still out there on the waiver wire, his roster percentage has shot up over the last week. But if he's still out there, I'd go pick him up. We know he can get hot in a hurry, and he's hot right now.
Yep. And he can get cold in a hurry real quick too with Tyler O'Neill. I think we've seen that as well. But it's never been a
It's
question of
usually the
talent.
injured list
Yeah.
that cools him off.
Injured list and then some struggles coming back off that injured list as well. Like he's been as streaky a player, I
Yeah.
think, as I've seen over the last couple of years. But certainly worth the ad in terms of like upside. You can't do much better than Tyler O'Neill, and it certainly seems like he's having a nice little hot run. Let's get into the not so good. Drew, can you start with Aaron Civale? Because I need to pull up my Bryce Elder notes.
Yeah. Made his debut Saturday against the Tigers. He was acquired ahead of Tuesday's trade deadline from the Guardians in exchange for a guy who we just talked about, a pretty high level prospect in Kyle Manzardo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, was I don't know, was Manzardo the biggest prospect that got dealt this week? I guess the Mets got a couple big names for Scherzer and Verlander. Acuna, I can't say his first
Yeah.
name.
Yeah.
Drew Gilbert, Edgar Cuero, and the Giolito deal would be a big one. But Manzardo's probably, I don't know, number
Manzardo
one
certainly was.
biggest prospect.
Manzardo would have been number
Yeah.
one if we did this starting the season. I'd probably go with Acuna now, just because I think he has a little higher floor and because of his positional value, can play shortstop, second base, and center field. But yeah, Manzardo absolutely would be second on that list for me. And all due respect to Edgar Caro and a couple of these other guys he mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big one for one style trade, an aggressive play for the Rays to get Civale and work him into their pitching system. The first results of that, I would say, were a bit underwhelming on Saturday. He did mostly induce soft contact, which is kind of his calling card, but 3 earned runs on 9 hits over just 4 1/3 innings and a loss for the Rays at Detroit. No walks, 4 strikeouts. He was fine, which is kind of what I would expect him to be moving forward. Like what he had a 2.3 something ERA, 2.34 ERA, I believe he was pitching to this year in Cleveland. That did not seem sustainable in this modern baseball environment for a guy who doesn't miss a ton of bats. He has really good command. The Rays need innings coverage, honestly, with Shane McClanahan out indefinitely because of a forearm issue. there are some red flags with what's going on with that McClanahan story. I feel like this is going to turn out to be something serious. He's going for second opinions and all that. They haven't really announced an official diagnosis yet. Tyler Glasnow was scratched from his start on Sunday with back tightness.
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey Springs, Shane Baz, Josh Fleming, Drew Masyn, all on the long-term IL. Tampa
Right.
Bay's kind of limping down the stretch on the pitching side, and I guess Civale should at least be steady in real life terms, a good pickup in that regard. But for fantasy, beyond like some whip help, I wouldn't expect a surge into elite production just because he's now on the Rays and the Rays are smart. I'd actually expect more of what we saw on Saturday, that the ERA is kind of due for some natural regression. Cleveland did well to sell high. I think he's a fine pitcher, but without like a dominant strikeout rate, I would still start him every time out in fantasy. Like he should be able to like help you with wins and maybe ERA and whip. But I think what we saw on Saturday is probably about what to expect moving forward. Maybe with a better chance at a victory.
Yeah, that's a good point. This just happened. Carlos Rodon left with an injury in his most recent start. Did not make it through the third inning. 2 2/3 innings, 3 hits, 5 earned runs. Did have 5 strikeouts, but also issued 2 walks. Make sure you're checking out because there'll be certainly updates by the time that we're done recording. But make sure you're checking out rotowire.com to see what's going on here with Carlos Rodon. Unfortunately, just a absolute disaster of a first season with the Yankees. Has not pitched well and also has dealt with, didn't get this going until this early in the second half of the season. Definitely something that you got to keep an eye on, Drew. This is, I feel bad for him. I know that he's got a lot of money in the bank account that'll help him, but that doesn't, I guarantee you Carlos Rodon would trade it for good health and pitching well.
Yeah, it looks like he walked off the field on his own, but they're calling it a leg injury. I don't know.
Leg injury.
Okay. Looks like maybe calf or something. Yeah, keep it locked on the Rotowire player news and we'll have all the updates.
And speaking of, unfortunately, guys that have not had a lot of success as of late, Bryce Elder, and he had a really tough start on Saturday against the Cubs, gave up 5 runs in the first inning, 7 total, 5 of those earned, gave up 2 homers, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. Now, it wasn't that long ago that Bryce Elder was like leading baseball in ERA. He had a 1.92 ERA at the end of May, but since basically July, he has been a inconsistent option at very best. In his 25 2/3 innings in the month of July, he had a 5.96 ERA, only struck out, looking here, 10 guys in his 25 2/3 innings. He's never going to be a big strikeout guy. And that's my concern with Bryce Elder. He's relying on his defense as much as anybody. Yeah, there's a chance for long-term success because he throws strikes with all of his arsenal and doesn't exactly give up a ton of hard contact, but he does give up a lot of contact. And there are going to be clunkers like this where if he doesn't have his best command, you're going to see a lot of home runs. You're going to see a lot of not necessarily self-inflicted damage in terms of walks, but a lot of singles and doubles that he's going to give up. I'm kind of out on Bryce Elder for the rest of the year, if I'm being honest with you. I do love the fact that he's playing behind what I think is the best team in baseball. So you do get that W chance, and you might be able to give you 6 innings of 3-run baseball. But he's also got a chance to have starts like he did on Saturday, and he's had an awful lot of those in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, he gets the Pirates next time out if the Atlanta stays on their current rotation blueprint. That's a good chance for a bounce back. But what he was doing in the first half, you could kind of poke holes into, and there have been a few like dominant outings mixed in with what have been some really bad starts in the second half, but it's that like natural ERA regression kind of thing that we're seeing with him. And he just, the strikeout potential is not high enough to where I'm comfortable throwing him out there, knowing that, there could be a blow up. I'd probably start him at Pittsburgh.
There you go.
But just, and I think that'd be on Thursday too. So that's usually a lighter slate. You're kind of stuck with he'd be one of the best streamer options available on the board as he looks to bounce back at least. But he was not the high 1 ERA guy that we saw in the first half.
No, and we knew that was going to happen, but it's been a little more drastic than I think we expected, right? Like we
Mhm.
expected there to be some regression to the mean, but maybe a little slower. There have been some real poor starts that might have hurt you quite a bit in fantasy. And then my final three down, I'm cheating. I'm just going with the entire Diamondbacks. They lose 12-1 on Saturday, and they have just looked dreadful in the second half. They have won 5 games since the All-Star break, Drew. They've now lost 5 straight. Look, I was starting to believe too, and I love what they did at the deadline, getting a guy like Paul Sewald, who's actually he's not a rental. You're going to have him for a couple of years. Tommy Pham was a nice get for a lottery ticket in Jeremy Rodriguez. I do like what they did at the deadline. I do like that they were aggressive in making the team better. Although it's a little weird that they also dealt Andrew Chafin. Like that was kind of a weird little financial thing. I'm sure was invited into that situation. But they stink, Drew. They look really bad, and it's disappointing because we talked about all those wild card teams. I mean, they were in prime position for a while. They looked like they were going to be that forward, the team that's going to get a chance to play a couple of games
Yeah.
at home. Now I think that you have to put them well behind. Certainly the Phillies. I think the Phillies are the best of that group in terms of talent. I guess I would probably go with the Giants next, but I don't really trust that team either. We've kind of refused to give the Giants their flowers all year, I think, Drew. We started
For
off
years
being
and years,
me.
for
Yeah, it
decades.
did. Yeah, it really has. Well, of course, the Cardinals and Giants maybe have had a little bit of a rivalry, but the even year and odd year BS, I guess you could say, with both of those teams is something that might skew your opinion of that team, to be honest with you. No, I'm kidding. Drew would never, ever. Yeah, he might be willing to hate on a team that he dislikes. No, I'm just kidding. I just don't know what they do. Like they look awful. And if they're kind of a team that I'd be looking to like kind of fade and maybe even stream against down the stretch, because that lineup is just really struggling and the starting pitching isn't good enough to carry that lineup right
Uh, I don't
now.
know. I mean, they were due to have to run into a bit of a wall.
This is more
I
than a
think they're
wall,
in.
man. This is a
I know,
Terradome.
I know. Their run differential is down to minus 16. But yeah, talking about those wild card teams, I think well, the Padres probably have the best roster of the bunch,
Oh, the Padres. Yeah, I
but
keep forgetting. Yeah.
yeah, and they're only 3 back, and they're still trying to go for it. But I think the Diamondbacks are going to turn it around. I think they'll be all right. I mean, there's there's plenty of talent in that lineup, up and down. There's plenty of talent in that rotation. Um, I maybe it's because I have some financial investment
I
in
was
the
going to
over on
ask,
their win total, and
do you think
they
they're
need
going
to
to
add
be
a few
doing
more at
better,
least.
or do you want them to do better? That's my question for you. Do you think they're going to be doing better, or do you want them to do better?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. Column A, column B.
There you
I
go.
think that they're gonna be better. They're gonna be better.
Well, they can't be worse.
It's
That's
just
some good
yeah,
news.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They'll be fine.
Enough about the terrible Arizona Diamondbacks, who I hope this springs them to a 7-game win streak just for Drew's financial thing. He just bought a new TV. He needs the Diamondbacks to do well. Let's talk about some fab targets.
Yeah. First for me is Matt Wallner. I don't think we mentioned that Byron Buxton went on the IL this past Thursday because of a right hamstring strain. He's going to be shut down for the next 2 weeks,
Yeah.
like shut down completely from baseball activities. So the best case scenario would be that he returns to the Twins like right at the very end of August, maybe even early September. And so, like, whether at the DH spot that Buxton had been filling or in the corner outfield, this latest Buxton injury opens the door for Matt Wallner to get regular at bats. And he's earned those regular at bats so far. Has a 938 OPS, 6 home runs, and 14 RBIs through 29 games this season at the major league level. He had a 927 OPS with 11 homers and 47 RBIs in 67 games this season at AAA St. Paul. We've talked about it before that sometimes it can seem like these Minnesota corner outfield, first base DH types blend together and tend to only tease you like in spurts as a fantasy manager. But Wallner looks pretty legit to me. Like
Yeah.
39th overall pick in 2019. Good offensive numbers at every level of the Twins minor league system. He's a Minnesota native, left-handed hitter who can crush both righties and lefties. With an everyday job now, and with the track record of power production in the minors and what he's done so far in the majors, he's a must add for me leading into this week. Now with it looks to be an everyday role in that Twins lineup, and they need some pop, and he at least can has the potential to provide it and has provided it so far.
Yeah, for sure. I really like Wallner. I especially like Wallner in the long term, but with the Buxton injury and the fact that some of those guys just haven't hit all that well, I think Wallner's going to get that opportunity, and he's certainly taken advantage of it thus far. One of the more underrated prospects coming into the year, and he has proven a lot of people who liked him right so far. I'm going to be a little aggressive, and I am going to say go get Masyn a win now before it's too late, because I do think Masyn Winn is going to finish the year as the Cardinals shortstop. And I talk to a lot of folks about minor league baseball. It's part of my job. I cannot be more impressed with what I have heard and seen in my limited viewings as well from Masyn Winn. You're going to take a look at his numbers, and they're good. He's hitting 286 with an OPS that's now above 800. But it's especially been impressive since the month of June. He had a 763 OPS in that month. In the month of July, he hit 359, 427, 750 with 8 homers, added a couple of stolen bases. And in August, in a very small sample size, 333, 381, 556. Winn was a two-way player coming into the draft, and the Cardinals did the smart thing and said, you're not a two-way player anymore, and moved him to shortstop. Has an absolute howitzer of an arm. I would love to see an Ellie De La Cruz versus Masyn Winn throw off and see who can get to 100 miles per hour first, because they both can throw. And that defense matters because it's going to keep him in the lineup. He's only made 6 errors so far this year, Drew. That's really impressive for a young player in AAA and with bad scorekeepers as well. To only make 6 errors is really impressive. And he can hit. He has a chance to hit for average. He's starting to tap into his power. I think he has the speed to steal bases. I'm not sure if he's going to be a contributor in that just yet. It's tough to tell with the Cardinals, and it's tough to tell with the fact that he hasn't run a lot in AAA. We've seen lots of guys who have speed who don't run in AAA and then start running. Hello, Wander Franco. This is something that I'm not comparing Masyn Winn to Wander Franco. He's not anywhere close to that type of talent, but I do think he's a well above average offensive player who provides solid defense, who will be in the lineup every single day. If you wait until he gets the call up, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. Go get him now. Stash him on your bench. I imagine he's up right after the Rookie of the Year deadline comes, which is expected to be right around August 20th, something like that. So you're going to have to wait like a week or two, but I think he's worth the wait.
I think exactly 2 weeks from today, he's going to be making his major league debut on like a Sunday afternoon game for the Cardinals. Nice. Dripping with tools. I didn't expect him to figure it out offensively as quickly as he has. But he's the arrow is pointing up with his offense. I think he's going to be a really fun player to watch. He might actually get me to tune into another Cardinals game, which I haven't really been watching them super closely, which brings me to my next fab target, who's Steven Matz. And I can't believe I'm recommending Steven Matz as a fantasy anything other than a fade, but here we are.
Real quick, Drew,
another good outing. Yeah.
I got to interrupt you real quick. It's worth pointing out we have a little show rundown, and Drew left a question mark behind Steven Matz. I think he wasn't even 100% sure that he wanted to bring up Steven Matz. Just a little inside baseball stuff there. That makes me laugh looking at it now, because it's just Steven Matz question mark.
Well, I was waiting for the shoe to drop and like for him to have a terrible outing last night, but he was good again. So I don't know what's going on. And like I said, I'm not super locked into the Cardinals game. I haven't been studying his starts. I haven't even really been watching them. But another good outing. Yeah. Saturday against the Rockies. It was at home in St. Louis, not at Coors Field. That should be noted, but 6 strikeouts over 6 innings of 1-run ball, 5 hits, 2 walks. Since he pitched his way out of the Cardinals bullpen, maybe a little bit by default, and back into a starting role at the beginning of July, Matz has a 1.65 ERA, 33 strikeouts, only 7 walks, and 6 starts covering 32 2/3 innings. Just a really incredible rebound from when he couldn't even throw his curveball in the first half. Now, it's worth noting that during this stretch, he has faced the Rockies outside of Coors Field, the Nationals, the Cubs twice, but the Cubs have been hitting. White Sox, Diamondbacks, part of the Diamondbacks cratering was a Steven Matz start. So not the most difficult schedule, but if the current rotation plan holds for the Cardinals, Matz would get the Royals next, and I believe it would be the A's after that. So that probably about two of the offenses you really want to see right now. So yeah, add Steven Matz in fantasy. Ticket from me who hasn't been watching Cardinals games. What a world.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Steven Matz. Wow. August 6th. And we're talking about recommending Steven Matz. What a world.
Bauers and Steven Matz.
Yeah. Yes. Davis Schneider. Look, he's somebody that we talked about yesterday, Drew. And I was kind of like, do we want to pick him up? I'm buying in after the small sample, man. It has been really impressive what he's doing. He's, by the way, is also 2 for 3 with a home run today. He's hitting 636,
is he really? Wow.
667, 1.182 while hitting third in the middle of one of the better lineups in baseball. Look, it's obviously not sustainable. This is not going to be a player who becomes, for those of you who read Matt Christopher books, this is not the kid who only hit homers. This is not Sylvester Codmeyer. But he put up strong numbers in the minors, and he looks the part. He looks like he's going to be the everyday second baseman. If you need middle infield help, go give Davis Schneider a shot. I'm not suggesting blow your fab budget. A lot of you probably don't have fab budgets left, to be completely honest with you, because of that's how it works. So very few teams have a ton of money to spend at this point. And if you do, you probably just haven't been paying a whole heck of a lot of attention this year, which is fine. Thank you for tuning in anyway. But Davis Schneider has looked really good. I would also say that I would add Curtis Mead as a bench option. We talked about him as well. Long term, I think Curtis Mead is a much better prospect than Davis Schneider, even though Davis Schneider looks like Hank Aaron mixed with Babe Ruth, mixed with everything right now in this early portion of his campaign. But Curtis Mead has a chance to hit for average. I think there'll be some power coming. I'm not sure I can count on it, though, this year. As Drew mentioned in our show on Saturday, it seems like more of a guy who's only going to be playing against lefties, whereas Davis Schneider is going to get a chance, I think, to play every day. Absolutely, though, go get Davis Schneider because you want to be a part of this hot streak. And what's the worst thing that happens?
So we got Jake Bauers, Steven Matz, and a 28th round pick are our big topics on this show.
And an Australian, too.
Yeah. I love his story, though.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm going to throw another one in there. Carlos Hernandez is also going to be a fab target for me. If you're desperate for saves, and aren't we all? Carlos Hernandez, I think, looks like a good pickup from the Royals bullpen mix. Scott Barlow was traded to the Padres on Tuesday. Roldis Chapman was traded to the Rangers back in June. The closer job is wide open in Kansas City, and Hernandez is probably best equipped to grab a hold of it. Austin Cox got the most recent save Friday against the Phillies, but Hernandez converted the one prior, and Hernandez is more of a strikeout getting righty compared to Cox being like a soft contact style lefty reliever. I know you probably can't count on the Royals bringing a ton of leads into the ninth inning down the stretch, but they're actually playing their best ball of the season, best ball in a while right now, and had a 7-game winning streak going that got snapped on Saturday. Bobby Witt Jr. is blossoming. We talked about Michael Garcia a few weeks ago. They're going to win some games down the stretch, and I think Hernandez is going to get the majority of the save opportunities and should convert them. Wouldn't shock me if he gets 7 saves down the stretch, which would be right up there with the league leaders and certainly help you in fantasy. That's like a save a week. I think that's a good baseline what to expect from him.
Yeah, I like that call. And I do think he will get a good portion of the chances. Like you said, not counting on a ton of those chances. I hope there's not a ton of those chances, if I'm being completely honest with you. The Mariners play the Royals 7 times in the next few weeks.
Do they really? Wow. That's odd.
That's one of the reasons why by the way, if you're betting on stuff, the Mariners' schedule down the stretch stinks. They have a lot of games against the White Sox, the Royals, the Athletics, and the Mets, and all of those teams are not trying very hard at all. Chad asked an interesting question here. Let's go to the actual question. There we go. Would you rather have the aforementioned Bauers or red hot but part-time Ryan O'Hearn? That's an interesting one. I think O'Hearn might be a little more interesting to me because I like the lineup around him a little bit more. but at the same time, because he's not playing every day, the counting stats might not be there. So which one would you go with, Drew?
Yeah, I mean the Orioles have done a great job with platooning this year and gotten a ton out of that platoon process. So I don't think they're going to deviate that where like O'Hearn just doesn't play against lefties, and there's a couple
Right.
guys on that roster that just don't play against lefties.
Yeah.
Bauer's going to play against both. You know, I believe more in O'Hearn, but situationally, I think I would go with Bauers unless you're in a daily a league where you can do some daily lineup moves. I think I would rank Bauers ahead of O'Hearn.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We've got a little bit of time, Drew. Did you stay up and watch it?
I set an alarm, and when it went off, I quickly turned it off and did not even turn the game on. I have not even seen highlights. I don't know if I'll ever watch them. I'm
No,
heartbroken. I'm gonna
don't.
pretend like this World Cup didn't even exist, didn't even happen.
Well, here's the thing. I have a question for you too. So, first of all, don't ever watch the highlights. It was pathetic, absolutely pathetic. I think they missed 3 penalty kicks, and then
Yeah,
also,
Rapinoe missed one.
yeah,
Yeah.
and she looked real upset about it too. I don't know. Professional athletes deal with things in different ways. Sometimes seeing somebody laughing off something can rub you the wrong way. But here's my question for you: is anyone going to care about this World Cup now? Because it's on at BFE times. It's not going to be, you don't have the big teams in here. Are people still going to care about this World Cup?
I don't know, that's Fox's problem. That's not a Drew Silva problem.
That's fair. That's fair. It's just I want that sport to keep growing. And I hope that people
Yeah, I
do tune
know.
in.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's I love soccer. Women's soccer, the USMNT, when they no doubt disappoint me. Are you going to come to Seattle when the World Cup is? That's the perfect time to come visit me, man. Is to come
Yeah,
up
there's a
when
I think there'll be a group at Arrowhead too. So I might try to go there.
Uncle Ted brings up a good point. Japan is amazing. Like that is the team to
And
watch,
Spain
man.
looks awesome. Yeah,
Spain does look
but if
good.
you think about it, like if you're a young girl in the United States, there's a chance you didn't see any of the group stage
Yeah,
matches.
yeah.
I guess the first one was started at like 9 o'clock Central. That maybe you caught some of that, but the other two were overnight. And then that loss, like, yeah, it kind of stinks as something that only happens every 4 years, and
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be a very forgettable performance for the U.S. women's national team. I love watching them too because it's the one team we have in soccer that does well,
Yeah,
and so like I love soccer. I've always loved soccer, even as a kid, and
yeah.
it's the one like high level team that I get to root for that doesn't always let me down, just sometimes lets me down, and this was certainly that team.
It's nice to be let down sometimes, though, isn't it? It's nice to have like
Yeah.
high hopes for something, whereas we can't really get let down by USMNT. They're just not good enough to compete with those types of teams. By the way, it is worth pointing out that I used to hate soccer, but have you ever played Football Manager before, Drew, or heard about Football Manager
Yeah.
before?
Mhm.
Simulated soccer game.
I haven't played
Uh,
it, but I'm familiar with it.
Oh, it got me into soccer so bad because that game is so amazing. Football Manager, if you want to sponsor this show, let me know. I've spent so many hours playing your game. It'd be nice to get something out of it. But yeah, what a bummer. What a bummer to be out this early and to not one goal in the last 3 games for the USWNT, the most dominant team in maybe any sport that I can think of. And you get 1 goal in the last 3 games. Didn't see that coming, man.
I saw that Ryan Richardson, who we talked about yesterday as well.
Yeah.
Not great.
Nope. Nope. That didn't go very well. And our buddy
Yeah,
Chad brought it up that it
4
wasn't a
earned
great
runs in the
matchup.
first inning. Yeah.
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 That
That's true.
did not go well. He did bounce back after that and was able to get a couple of strikeouts, but of course he went 3 innings. We talked about that we were predicting that it would go right around 3 innings, but not the debut he was looking for. And it does make me wonder if Connor Phillips will get a shot to pitch for them. And he has been fantastic in the minor leagues, somebody that you might want to take a look at. That's going to do it for us. Thanks for tuning in to the Rotowire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Please rate and review the show if you like it and what you're hearing and all that good stuff. You can follow us on X. I'm at Crawford MILB with an _in between. Drew is at Drew Silva. Stay tuned for more episodes every day of the week, and you all have a wonderful week. Please do it.